Welcome back to Empirical Animal Podcast Experiment. Today's guest is Matthew Arthur Williams, a multidisciplinary artist based between Scotland and England, with whom I had the pleasure to film last year during his Ampersand and Photoworks residency at Wigwell Lodge. And that film project was particularly important for me because, first of all, Matthew surprised me by setting up an improvised music performance together with a brilliant violinist, Blaise Henry. But also because that conversation was so rich that it was then when I decided that I need to start a podcast. So this conversation is dedicated to defining what an art practice is. And we discussed in particular the soundtracks and soundscapes that he creates for the purpose of his films. Please note that we recorded this podcast in June. So the Nottingham exhibition that Matthew talks about has ended, but there's a new one coming at Stills Edinburgh, so if you happen to be around, go check it out. And now let's get started. Brilliant to see you again. I'm really happy that you were around and it was possible to have a conversation here. And there's multiple reasons why I care specifically about having you on the show because
I mean, you're the presenter.
Podcast. Because, that conversation we had was so rich that I really felt that, the short film wasn't making it just. And so initially I was thinking that I would repurpose the interview that we did at Wigwell Lodge. But ultimately, I came up with this new formula, and I'm thinking that why not making a dedicated conversation? And this is now a cycle I'm trying to develop. So I hope that we get to discuss what your art practice is about, which has multiple facets. There's great variety. Your approach to collaboration, which is another big subject for me, and like we spoke previously, your relationship with time and using time as your medium. But probably like the best place to start would be to kind of introduce the body of work that you've been developing and like the most important and recurring themes, because there's it's like a continuous research from what I can see from your work, and a personal identity within a community, sense of belonging, home, like these things. Could I ask you to kind of start from that place?
Yeah, sure. We were even talking about learning from others, and like we do, doing this is by bringing people in and asking how they make work and how they do things and what they're interested in helps you figure out who you are in that as well, in that kind of way of making. And it's all, I think this idea that the artist is the individual person who's making something in this kind of like one-track mind, or like, the painter who paints individually and that's all there is. It's like, it's kind of a lie that doesn't really exist in the world, because we all absorb and we all take from each other, if not in an extractive way, but in a learning way, and it's learning capacity to kind of like absorb material. So all of the themes in my work are all material things in some shape or form, even if they tap into something that is spiritual or something that is in the atmosphere, that isn't something that you can physically grab onto. It's still I still consider it all material. And for me, it's always learning. I'm learning as well, and I have always been really curious. And I think that's why I studied photography, because that's what the photographer does. It wants to document the world. It wants to find something in the world that you can't find just through the everyday. So you want to use another medium to extract that. And by learning in those traditional methods of the kind of subgenres or the genres of photography in itself, I think I took on this, what I would say is a very, I'll just use the term traditional. I think it's just a traditional way of taking on what you see. And I've brought that into all of the other things that I do in my life. So that's why I always think I'm a photographer first before I'm anything else, because that's the way in which I've learned how to use, that's where my practice is, and the way in which I use that medium to pull out the things that I want to talk about. And it's always inquisitive, explorative, it's learning, and if I want to do portraits, and because the reason why I want to do those portraits is because maybe I want to ask those people in that portrait setting about histories, lives, place, location, language, all of the things that make us human, right? I want to do that in that setting, and I'll do it in a really slow way. And that is one of the early projects that I done when I was studying my undergrad, was working with couples who were talking about how their relationships was. I was doing these portrait series of couples. I had like 3-4 friends who I would sit down in a similar setting like this. So I'd be like, we can do it in the flat, we can do it in the studio. I'd like to see what it's like to do it in a domestic space and also do it in a studio space. I always wanted to blur those lines of like, how does this kind of setup, a grandiose setup versus a more relaxed setting, change how the body tenses, or especially with a couple beside each other, and how in that private cocoon they're able to relax, but in this more like camera pointed way, what would happen? So even from then I was really curious about people and how people are in the world and stuff. So I feel like that, even though that's not in the work that I do now, that kind of baseline exploration has followed through all of my work, all of my projects.
So that sounds quite similar to how I'm viewing portraiture in a video form. That there is like an element of like a psychological kind of play, right? Because you're essentially exploring the personality of the person in front of you, right? And to the point that they invite you and allow you.
Yeah.
But you can work on that dynamic.
And you can't just do that. You have to build a trust. So you have to, there was multiple sessions at that point. I'd be like, okay, we'll do it this time. And then what you also have to do, it's not always about them. It's actually about you as well. Like, so it's about you being there with them and how much they're prepared to let you in and how much you're prepared to share, because it's all anecdotal. They're sharing their stories, you're sharing your stories, and it's somehow just being captured. And it's being captured in the still image in that time, at that point. And then, I mean, if you want to fast forward to some of the work that I do now, if you're thinking about people and the makeup of their identities, and the work that I was doing was thinking more generally about the makeup of my own identity, and looking at how I'm perceived by others and how I perceive others, and how, as a generalizing of, I guess, a diaspora or anything that is connected to Britain and further afar, I've always been really interested in what happens in this melting pot, and this big pot of like cultures and identities. And I've never really, you kind of grow up in this place and you don't really think about the things that are normal to you that is not normal to somebody else, or your experiences that you just take on because you're like, all right, I'm just here. However, that somebody else's experience of just being here is, you're not actually from here, but you have part of something that's from here. So all of those things that then make you go, oh, right, so the thing that I thought was fine isn't fine, or the thing that I thought was, or whatever is the narrative. And I mean, I love it. I find it just like so fascinating, because that is the world, right? But it's also on this island a really, really touchy subject, and it's got so many depths and layers of histories and so many depths of narratives and so many things that have happened. And I think it's really fascinating because there's so much culture and so much information that, you could go into the BBC and go into the iPlayer and look at some documentaries about, I don't know, stuff that's in the previous century, and it will do a generalizing overview of that thing, which we can all go, oh yeah, that's what happened in 1960s, or that's what happened in 1975. That's a really good documentary that really pulls in the history of disco, or whatever. But there's so many micro stories within all of those bigger stories. There's a story about this, but actually, and I'm always fascinated in the smaller stuff that is, that's the stuff that is really textural. That's the thing that builds the other story. There's the voices that don't get their say, or don't get the opportunity to really do it, because they're the ones that fill the buses, or they're the ones that like line the streets, people moving this way down the street and moving that way. I recently was in, this is going to jump topic, which is what I always do, but I was recently in an archive, the Alistair Gray archive in Glasgow, and looking through a lot of his stuff, and since he's passed. And it's amazing looking at his ledger, which is a big book of just his notes and drawings, and where he's kind of like began to plan a lot of his writing. But he's also recording place, and he's recording Glasgow in such a way. But you can see how he records stuff. He's looking at the streets of the road, and he's got arrows on the streets, because he's looking at how people use the street. He's looking at how people don't just walk up and down the street. They're like, okay, there's a shop there. The reason why most people are going around that bend and doing that and going over there is because there is a thing over there that they need to get to, and that's work or whatever it is. And when they leave that, they come back this way and then they go there. So that probably happens here. You see people go to the bus station, people come off the bus station and they go over to the Sainsbury's, or they go, and that never really gets recorded. That movement of people doesn't get recorded. What gets recorded is that, oh, there was a shop here that shut down in 18 whatever, it got reopened in 1920, and that's the information that gets stored. But the footsteps of people and how they move doesn't necessarily get recorded. And if it does now, it's just done for data. It's just like a data recording, so that it's like, oh, we don't want that area to be too congested at 5 o'clock rush hour happen. That's the only way that information gets used. It's not used in a more, I guess, creative, or not even creative actually, just like a general bit of information that's important, because that is important, I think.
Yeah, so it's like the experience of the place,
Precisely.
rather than the information that makes the
Precisely.
place as like solid,
Yeah.
group of solid objects.
Yeah. So, and then it makes you understand the place. It makes you understand what it had, what it has, and who was using it to do the things that it had, like to make it up. I find that stuff way more fascinating than all of the other extra stuff. So,
Like, as the time is passing, right, and we're referring to an event in the past, like our perspective on that event will continuously change the further we go from it, for multiple reasons, but also because often we get actually more information available. And so maybe since we started like this, working with archives, when and how did it start for you, kind of incorporating like historical materials and doing this sort of research, and making it a part of your practice, which commonly is seen as producing new work, and not necessarily repurposing archival materials and directly informing the work you're making through the lens of those past archives.
But I suppose it goes straight back into photography again, or if you're a sculptor who recycles material. So we already are working with archives. You have your own archive. You go back into your own material that you might have filmed in Italy, or anything that you've done in your past, and you go, that's like, we're always working with it. And there are private archives, which is our stuff, and there are public ones. And I think it's the moment I began to really, I've always scanned family photographs, and I've always photographed them as long as I've known how to do work with photography. I've always been really interested in like looking back at the family albums and going back and all that stuff. So that's one way of working with archives. I think it's knowing that you have the ability, you have the accessibility, if anything, to say, I'm going to go to a public archive that has been the material in there that I have no connection to, but I want to know more about a thing. I think it's having the access to that and knowing that anybody has agency to do that. And that doesn't come naturally. That's not a natural, you have to be kind of introduced into that by the academic structure, or you have to be introduced to it by another artist or anybody who goes, have you seen this place that has all this records? You can go here, and you can do that. And even if I did know that years ago, I wouldn't have had the courage to have done it in the way that I do it now, because I've slowly been introduced to it and saying, actually, no, this is a resource that is there to be used. And if it's not used, then what's, if people aren't using them, then it's just there to gather dust. And that, I would say, my awareness of how that looks probably only started happening in 2019, 2020. I think physically maybe like 2020 or 2019 to 2020, because digitally I could maybe have gone onto a website and gone, okay, I'm trawling through a collection and I can just be on the computer. But I think physically, if it wasn't for going to the Sky and Lacauche archives physically and being in that space and walking around it with an archivist and going through some stuff, and be like, oh great, this is amazing. I don't think I would have had that same confidence to do so. When I lived in Manchester, I would go to what's the library called? There's a really beautiful library and it's on Deansgate. I've forgotten the name. And it's a man's name, and I'm just going to be like plucking a random name out of the air, like the Robert something library. It's not that at all. But it's a grandiose space. So like when you're in it, you're just like, wow. And like, it's also an archive because there's just like tons of material that you can go through and find. I don't know, I think it's when you begin putting, it's another thing of like when you begin putting the thing that you're interested in. So again, as I was saying, I'm interested in people, but I'm also interested in place. I'm interested in the West Midlands, I'm interested in the north of England, I'm interested in Scotland, I'm interested in the Caribbean, I'm interested in the British Isles as a wider thing. I'm also interested in lots of growing flowers, lots of things that is just in the world. And the way that you go about it, like, okay, what do I do to find this? Do I just use the internet, or do I use my hands and my legs and I go to botanical gardens to look at this species of thing and whatever information they have on it, or do I go to like a film archive? Working on, I'll give you a good example of going to like a physical one to get film material. Working on the Soon Come film, I was introduced to the Media Archive of Central England, and there was another one called the Staffordshire Film Archive, and then there was the Stoke-on-Trent City Archives. And because I knew that I just wanted to really immerse myself in Stoke-on-Trent and Staffordshire and that area, I just kept going to the physical place. When I went on the website, I learned that they just didn't have the resources to digitize, and nobody really does have the resources to digitize all that stuff. And if it isn't for somebody going, oh, I want to look at this thing, how do I look at it? They'll go, you can come down and put it, we've got a VCR player if you want, you can put it in that or whatever. And it takes the archivist to be open to people coming in to do that, because some places are a bit more gridlocked so that you can't. But, and there's just general resources. People aren't being paid enough to do it, and there isn't enough people power to do all that stuff. So I think if it wasn't for like that period of time, I wouldn't, which when I was making that was 2021, 2020, 2021, 2022. I wouldn't have had that knowledge jump of how I'm going to use things after seeing it. Because I wanted to use it in this kind of, I want to sample maybe if there's some interesting oral histories, I would love to like pour a little bit of that story. Or if there's anything I've seen that brings this visual material forward, like the 8mm films or 16mm films or anything that was photographic that I could recognize, because I was so comfortable in those mediums of photography and filmmaking. I was like, all right, I would like to see more of that. That's the things that I want to see more of. I find it easier than going through the books,
Mm-hmm. And it's also an experience of different kinds, right? Being in those spaces and interacting with librarians, archivists. But Hugh, what came to my mind is how do you tie this research with just again, exploring your identity, because it's like, we could say that we are the product of all these, all the past, right? Also, lots of things and events that we're not consciously aware of, and is in this process of accessing archives and doing the research, kind of, are you tracing back, like where your personal backstory?
Yeah, and not just always my personal backstory, just a general backstory, or like, again, going back to how like history is being presented, like it's a generalized history in some way, and there's always these other stories that connect to that story or the bigger story, and I think that's where my interest lies. It's always it's not always necessarily about me, but sometimes in order for me to place myself in somebody else's story or in other stories, I'm already doing that. So it's trying to be transparent in that in the work as well. I'm not doing that from a third person perspective where my hand is in the story and I'm manipulating it for other people to view, but I'm very much there. Like, so I think it's just trying to be a bit honest in that process, that as an artist, what we do is quite, we're very much manipulating what we want when we want, and we then present it as new. That's the thing that I think is the most laughable thing about when we're presenting art. It's like, I've just found this thing, it's amazing, here you go, it's brand new. And now I want to get, like, I don't know, the pat on the back for having done that, which isn't the way it works at all, but it's one of the processes. So it's trying to also like disentangle yourself from that process while doing it at the same time. So I think that is it. But anything that feels really personal, I think the personal things are, they're really rich, in my opinion, from my own. I find the things that I do bring into my art that are personal, I have so many layers of richness to them. Not to really like go, oh my God, it's amazing. But I'm just like, even the horrible stories, they're really, really entangled in, like, if I was to pull some of that forward, I'd be like, yeah, I could present that to the world, but who's benefiting from that? Am I benefiting from that? Are other people benefiting from it, from learning about, I don't know, like a family tale or whatever that is? And the way that I want to use it isn't so much as like, here is a narrative or linear storyline that talks about movement or talks about like a history or family history or whatever, or personal story. But here is, I don't know, like a drop in the ocean of information that alludes to that thing, and then moving it into another area that I could then create a different story with. I think that's how I like to use my own personal work and stuff.
So probably here it's a good point to kind of connect it to like a broader concept of a art practice, creative practice. So that's another thing that for me was big highlight of our previous conversation. So stepping like slightly away from like producing work, right? Which we also touch on, specifically the ongoing exhibition you got in Nottingham, but having the practice, which obviously now is major involvement, major investment of time, but what does it give you, right? On do you see it as a process that allows you to grow, to discover something new? Is it
the project or the
I'm talking about in general sense, having the art practice, what kind of place does it have in your life?
The best. The best place, the only place. What does an art practice look like to you?
Well, I guess also to make it clear for the context. So I've disconnected for a period of time from my practice, several years, and right now I'm coming back to it, and finally I feel like I'm breathing. Right? I'm rediscovering a part of me that was lost.
So you believe that you have stopped having a practice because you've been doing other things that aren't practice related?
Yeah, pretty much. I disagree with that.
Yeah. And I think it's my understanding of what an art practice is now versus what I thought an art practice needed to look like. And maybe there's this assumption that it needs to look like a studio setup where you are dedicating your time to the whatever the thing is you're doing, whatever it is, but that is this like dedicated space. And I really don't view it that way anymore. Like, that's why I think that's why I collaborate. Like that, me talking with people, me talking with you now, this is an art practice in my opinion, because I'm learning from you and you're learning from me. And it's developing, this is like a form of research. And me going and walking in an area, doing laps around an area is a form of research because I'm learning and building up a knowledge bank that I will take into the medium that I want to, or pour it into something else, So I just do not separate whatever it is I'm doing with, I have a studio and like, I'm not there as much as I should be, but it's there and it exists and it is sometimes messy and sometimes tidy. And I have a laptop and my studio and my laptop, both things are studios. Because I have to do all this admin work to produce half the stuff that I do. I have to use the creative suites to do the stuff digitally that I need to do. The darkroom, if I'm printing in the darkroom, is also my studio because I have to print there, and that is also part of my practice. In the places that there are darkrooms, there's usually like a communal kitchen area where other people sit down. That's also part of my practice. Like all of those things are part of my practice. The thing I'd say isn't a part of it is when I'm washing the dishes or if I'm doing like a chore-based thing. But that is also my thinking time. Like I need to do really boring things for my brain to start thinking about the things that I should be doing in the studio. But if I go and sit in the studio and say, I'm working on my practice, my brain's going to be dead for a while. If it takes like a whole day, it's not until, if I go in at 9 o'clock, it wouldn't be until 4 o'clock until I began actively doing something. I've just had to, again, like, in this space, warm up the energy. Like I have to warm something up. I can't just sit at the desk and expect work to happen. So I always think when people talk about practice and how it needs to look and like, I'm not making anything anymore. It's like, you are making, it just doesn't look like the thing you think it should look like, but you are absorbing and it is doing something generative inside. It's just how you want to then take that and pour it into something else. And then once you don't pour it into that thing there, do you want to then move it again into another thing? And then you just keep moving it around. And that is the nature of practicing at a practice because you're moving something, in my opinion. I'm going to Cornwall this week and I've not been since I was a kid. And I went to Orkney last year and I was doing that that was a commission-based bit of research, both, complete opposite ends of the UK. And in both trips, I'm going to them in this really nice, fun, I can't wait to go, I'm excited. But I'm just trying to research as much as I can. I'll just get as much little bits of information. I want to do as much little bits of walking that I can do. And I want to just, with my camera, photograph the things that stick out to me, stand out to me. I'm not going to be able to document the whole place. I can only document what I see and what I observe. And I'm going to take that experience back to the studio whenever that film comes back and I look through what I've taken. And if I do any sound recording, what happens in those sound recordings. And then I'll sit with it and I might, the next thing that I do might not necessarily be about Cornwall. It might not necessarily be about Orkney, but those places have inspired what it is I'm making because they've just poured themselves into me or I've poured myself into it or whatever, like I'm using that place to kind of inspire me to do something. So I consider all of that practice.
I mean, this is a beautiful point because, it's, how I'm reading it is that, a practice is a lived experience, right? That it's not a single action that's kind of isolated from the rest of the life.
It's everything, like it's how you journal. And I'm slowly, I didn't understand that when I was younger because I was just studying what I study. You think you know them, but you don't really know anything. And I think if I look back on what I'm chatting about now, I probably, like another 10 years, I'll be like, oh yeah, it's chatting rubbish. Like things will always change no matter how old you get. And you just learn more as you keep moving through this world. So
yeah, like adding layers, discovering more layers underneath. But then another like important thing I want to talk about is the relationship with time. Like I coined the idea that I'm seeing that in your work you're using time as a medium, and a lot of this is transpiring here, that you're referencing to different places, spaces, moments and events in time, and bring them together. And so what was your relationship in time? And do you favor past events over like current events, future events, or are you treating everything equally?
I definitely do not make work with a futuristic outlook. There's nothing future forward thinking in my work whatsoever. Maybe a bit of present, maybe a bit, but it is entirely past. It's always, and I don't know why that is. And maybe that, I think the things that I do bring to the projects or like the ideas or the works themselves have, like, I know what they're going to do when they do them. And like I'm thinking about how this story is going to work with people or whatever's happening in it. But there definitely is no sense of futurism in my work. There's nothing. I don't believe it's doomed in my mind, so I'm not even going to go there. And maybe it's also because all the things that I use to make work are time-based mediums. So photography is time-based, film is time-based, sound is time-based. And, I suppose most things could be considered that, but they generally are, And because I work in the analog most of the time, it's a lot slower already. So there's the development of the thing, and it takes a while before you get the thing. That could also just like lend its hand into how I think about making like the works.
And then what about creating a space where you're allowing for dialogue with the past, because that's something which I think is very present in your films, that it is like active dialogue with the past.
I don't know. I think it's all intuitively. I do it just like intuitively, and I think maybe I'm stuck. That's why I say, like, if I don't know how to make work futuristically, because I don't know how. Like, I actually generally probably don't know how. And I am stuck in this kind of prism of communicating with past events or communicating with something that's gone, that needs to come back again. And that is throughout all of my works that I've been doing. And the most recent one is about love, and it's about loss. So that is about loss is time, and like, what does grief look like over time, and how do you lose something that you don't know, and then when you realize it's gone, but it's still here. And that's, again, if you think about archives, it is more than we can ever comprehend. Like, it's such a big, incredible thing, because it carries so much energy, spirit, physical artifacts, and it's all about memory. And those things are time-based. Like, memory is time-based. We can only think in memory about the thing that just happened 10 minutes ago when I walked through the door or whatever. And maybe that's just because I romanticize this like nice spiritual energy that it creates. Like, there's a lot of noise in that atmosphere, and it's all swirling around us constantly, but we don't know how to really put our thumb on it, I think that lends itself to photography again, because that's what photography captures. It's able to capture that noise, or it's able to capture that atmosphere through its techniques, through shutter speeds, apertures, all that stuff. And maybe if I'd never studied it, or maybe if it wasn't my medium of choice, I would approach things differently. But I think even if I were to be, I don't know, somebody who makes environmental art, if I was, for instance, if that was what I wanted to do, and I want to make pieces in public that people respond to, you're recording how it changes day to day, minute by minute, how people respond to it. And again, that again is quite time-based, you know, like it's all around us. So don't know if it really answers. I don't think that it wasn't a question to be answered, but it's a thing to kind of like think about, you know, like it's always around.
But I'm also thinking that maybe, you know, basically you're making evident the process, which is always there, right? That we are, you know, continuous dialogue with the past, and you know, it's just how things work, and you know, you just seem to highlight that. It could be.
So, I think that's what I'm interested in. I think that's really what I like to, explore. And then I really love, as you've probably seen in some of the works, it's just like, and what I notice as well, looking at other artists, what are the things that, you know, that they bring to their arts, even older artists or people who are not, you know, emerging artists, people who are middle of the career. What is it that they always bring to the table? And there's always something from their childhood that comes forward. There's something that they bring from being quite young that follows them along the whole journey, no matter how much maturity happens or how much distance they have with it. And the thing that I always seem to keep coming back to is like how I began to shape what Britain looked like to me. And like, it was constantly being on the motorways. It was constantly being on trains and going to the Midlands. And it was constantly being in transit. Like this transit thing was always in my life, I think. And that's why you always see that infrastructure in the stuff that I film, the things that I photograph. Because it really stuck out to me quite a lot. And then more recently, I guess, working with self-portraits in my work and using myself as a vehicle, that, you know, I was doing some self-portraits maybe about 15 years ago, and I was looking at them recently being like, oh, actually, that's always been a part of what you've done, but you just took a really big break in doing that for a bit because maybe you moved into a different direction. And then now that I'm back, more, I guess, solidly making a lot more self-portraits, and once you start, you kind of don't stop. So I guess I'm thinking about how that plays a part in how the body and the landscape work together. And it's, I don't know, like trying to say that has a nice narrative. The portraiture work has its nice narrative doing its thing, and the landscape stuff is doing another thing. And every now and then I want to bring them closer together, and does it work? Or maybe it doesn't work, and you know, you need to separate them again. But it's all trial and error. If I don't try, I won't know if it succeeded, and if it fails, then at least I tried, you know. So that's it.
Well, exactly. The experimental nature of what you're doing is very, very prominent. So maybe let's touch on the collaboration now, because they seem to be massively guided by intuition, and you know, you seem to be very open to you know, just happy accidents that happen there, right? So how does it work for you? Collaboration specifically, like what's the meaning compared to, say, producing self-portraits or going on a solo research? What's different, and what are the people you tend to collaborate with?
I guess I'll preface this one by saying, as much as it's been great and experimental, I'm slowly getting over this phase of like this unpredictable nature of being like, oh, it's all fun and we're just getting this nice thing, because there's some works that I want to do that I feel like need to really just be quite more directed and more structured. And what will be great at that stage is knowing that I have done these more experimental collaborations and allowing things to come into place, and using some of that knowledge and that bank of knowledge and trust in that process to inform a more structured setting. When I began really working with people and then working for people who also are very collaborative and lend it, like really trusting me just to help them with their projects. I always done it with this kind of like open invitation, like, here's some of the research, here's what I would love to do. And I'm going to ask you because I have a relationship with you as a friend, potentially, or we're both aware of each other in this kind of like, whatever, if it is a community or if it is just like on the fringes of a community or whoever this person is. And would you like to be involved? I'm looking for either a sitter, somebody to do some acting, somebody to do some dancing, somebody to do some music, or like, I have some instruments. Do you know how to play this? No? Great. Learn how to play it. That's fun. And that means we're all learning together. Like it's a learning together moment. And it works because it works for artists moving image. It works for some of the still images that I've produced, and it's also worked for some of the sound stuff that I've done because it's all quite like child's play. It's just, it's like workshopping the ideas together.
So a lot is about the shared experience of doing something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's nice. And again, like as we was talking earlier about these settings of doing portraits with people, because you want to find something out about them. It's like it's like bonding with someone. It's like, actually, I know we're going to be friends, and I've created this scenario to open up the friendship in that space, or like it's inviting somebody in some cases in paid capacities to just hang out in this like nice setting, where they can give something to the project that I can't, or vice versa.
And I know if it happened to you, but I have some friends that it's almost impossible to interact with them otherwise. That they would definitely not deny an invitation to do something together. But it's like, they just seem to be the kind of people that you just sit around casually. That there has to be some kind of pre-planned activity.
Mm-hmm. So there's that too. But fortunately, all the friends that I generally work with, I think the people that have come into my projects are all queer and are all friends who we've already had some of the conversations that the work ties into. Like, so we'll probably go for a walk and I'm like, okay, I'm working on this thing. And we're talking about, family, or what it means to be like Black in this landscape, or what it means to be queer in this landscape, or what was it like going to this club, or like, what was your experience clubbing in this setting, or whatever. And then you went abroad, and what was it like clubbing there, or whatever the topic is, it doesn't really matter. And then from there, taking it into like, okay, maybe I would like to do some pictures about something like that. And it's not necessarily saying, let's go to the club and reimagine what, how you felt in the club. It's like, it's come out in a different way.
So what matters is having some common denominator, like being part of the same community.
Yeah, so like Akash, who's in this current film and who's been in all of the films that I've kind of made off like work. We began collaborating maybe like 2016 or 17 because we used to work together in a retail outlet when I first moved to Glasgow. And then I was working on a project around the same time about kind of like collective exhaustion, about organising, when people are doing a lot of organising for to make things more easier for marginalised people. Or when marginalised people are trying to corner a space for themselves, whatever the thing is. What happens when you start hitting the brick wall of governance, or like things that you can't just like slip through and say, oh, I'm doing a thing. Well, you can't do that thing because you're not going to get funded to do that thing, or that space doesn't exist for you. And I was interested in what does collective exhaustion look like. So I was doing all these portraits and thinking about how to convey not just somebody being physically tired, but mentally tired and really prepared to tap out. And that opened up a wider kind of network of people for me in that space. And then I began collaborating with artists who needed their films made or their projects worked on. So I was working more like, as you might have been working in for PhotoWorks at that point, in this kind of like technical capacity, like I was just an operator. But again, their ideas were similar to some of my ideas. So we'd be talking about, and they were trusting in that process as well. So they were sharing a lot of their research, sharing a lot of their material, and we'll be talking about different kinds of shots and why, where and place and all that stuff. And just kind of learning from experience, so learning how they interacted with me and me also kind of like doing that with other people and figuring out if I liked some of those scenarios and if I didn't like some of those scenarios, what would I do differently in my own scenarios? So it's all been a big learning curve with no definite kind of like answers, but it's had quite good successes in my opinion. Like, I've not fallen out with any of my collaborators. They've never said I've exploited them in any shape or form. So that's good. Should touch some wood. I try not to do that in future. So.
Well, and the fact that you've been working with the same people on multiple projects, right? That's also shows something. And now kind of slightly shifting to music, because that's what I wanted to highlight specifically, that outside of photography, you also dedicated to music, either through DJing as Junglehassi, or creating soundscapes and collaborating with other artists. But so what kind of place then music make in your life, and how it ties with the rest of the things that you do? Is again like same thing for you, or does it have a dedicated space, and those collaborations involving sound and other people, musicians, do you view them differently?
Yeah and no. I find it more difficult now. I think my capacity to hold all of those together is slowly creeping down, because there's only so many hours in the day and there's so much energy that you can give to stuff in the day. And I'm finding that it's always, in the past, it's been quite nice and organic how throughout the year, some parts of my life is more visually orientated, and then the other parts are more sound or orally, like, coming in. And I don't manipulate my schedules or plans to make one lean more forward than the other. It just naturally, fortunately, happens that way, where sometimes I'll be DJing loads, but actually the art practice stuff isn't so demanding, and it's actually on the back burner. I'm like, okay, I can spend more time doing this. Or if but then when it comes back in and I generally need to make some sound work, I've found it quite difficult over the past year, like the past couple of years, because I just don't have the time to do it. And I kind of beat myself up knowing how to find time to do the other things, like in my practice. But the thing that I do struggle with is how to corner the space for sound. It's like I don't have the same studio set up for like having devices and keyboards or whatever plugged in. I have to always set that stuff up, and that's really exhausting. Like, you don't want to have to keep plugging in wires and unplugging wires just to set something up. And I find that the most creative time for me to do any sound work is in the evenings. It's like later in the day. And by that point, you need to cook your dinner and go to bed. Unless I'm going to stay up, And for DJing, like I can, if I've got a radio show I need to do this weekend, and I should really be thinking about where I'm going to record this radio show. And I'm pushing it to the last possible minute, because I know that maybe in that final minute, something will happen, but it's not the most natural process of it all. It's just whatever you can find time to do. So I struggle. I think I'm going to admit that it's a struggle to try and juggle all of it. When it comes to, so for example, I talk about two films that I make. So the one that I just showed you, which I was working with Blaze to kind of produce this thing, and I talk about Soon Come, the previous one.
Yes, I remember that.
And so the first one, let's talk about free films. So in order for me to make Soon Come, the score for that, I was also working on the score for Alberta Whittle's film that she showed in Venice. And me and her have been working together for a number of years, but she really went, I would love for you to work on the score for this thing. It would be great. I don't really know. I trust you to do, bring some stuff together, just make some stuff up, bring it to me. Let's see what we can do with it. And I was like, great, yeah, sounds fun. And she was actually wanting me to do sound for a different film, completely different film for her. But the person that was going to do sound for this one was sick and just was unresponsive. And time was it was getting down to the point of like, we really need to get this thing off the ground. So I said, yeah, sure, I'll give it a go. And I think naively, like I was really naive in thinking that I could possibly do such a thing. I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Like, because I view it in the same way that I would view making a film or making any kind of work, as we were talking about process before, in this kind of really experimental way. Like, sure, I know how sound comes together, like DJing in clubs or DJing in more ambient settings, or just playing music at home, putting on a record, knowing how you want to build your day with music. If it's a Sunday, you want to start, some people like it loud, some people like it noisy. I like it calm. I like and ease my music in the morning, and then play some more interesting stuff as the day goes on, whatever. And when I want to start playing some nice upbeat stuff that I can enjoy. And also I know, like, I guess thinking about how you would curate your own DJ set. How would you create your DJ sets if you were to do a set? How would you like people to experience the music that you would like to play? And what is the music you would like to play? And that would be a good starting point. And that's how I wanted to make the film scores work. How do I want people to first hear sound? Not just music, not just like melodies, but sound. Do I want it to be like water? Do I want it to be like fucking rumbles? What does it need to be really interesting? So with Alberta's film, at the beginning of the film, it was just really a tactile moment of the fingers on the kalimba. And it was just like this melody that was playing over and over again. And I remember talking to her about it. I was like, it would be really good to have this introductory kind of like FUD that we don't know what the hell that is, but it's just somewhere on there. She's like, yeah, that could be good. That would be really good. And I had no idea that she was going to be making such a long, it wasn't long, it's about 45 minutes, I think the film was, but it's in chapters, and I didn't really know that she was going to have these really big chapters in the film. So like each bit of the film needed to feel different, but also needed to have moments where you recognize a tone. So the kalimba comes back in later on and you recognize the tone. There's some djembe drums coming in, and then there's also some other, trying to think. The thing that I really wanted to experiment with was wind instruments, because that was what I was interested in. I was interested in flutes and clarinets and stuff. So I was doing that all in that film. Unfortunately, I was working with Richie Carey, who's like an incredible musician, but also like a really good engineer who can just sit in front of like the soundboard desk, and he'll be like, okay, record this into that mic, and he's just he's fine tuning all the messy bits, and then we're just doing loads of different takes. So I'd done a lot of the stuff in the studio. I'd kind of got a couple friends in to have a nice jam in my studio with some instruments, and then went up to his studio later on in the year, and we just tidied some of that stuff up, and then Alberta joined us and we've done that. So when it came to now making my own film, making my own work, and know that I didn't know that I wanted to do it all myself. I just knew that I didn't have a big budget, so I had to do quite a lot of it myself. I wanted to have lots of voices, and I wanted to kind of maybe potentially just do these recording sessions where we were doing covers of songs that we knew. So like in that film, People Make the World Go Round, there's a really amazing kind of like disco house edit of one of the songs, and it's just got this really prolonged beat before you get to the title, People Make the World Go Round, and it goes into the song. But it's got like 5 minutes of this just like repetitive thing. I was just interested in that repetition, and I wanted to do that for my own film. So I set up this kind of collaborative. It was collaborative because it was my friend Cassie, and we went to Pirate Studios of all places, because do not record in pirate studios if you need to record any sound, because it's never quiet enough. There's always somebody somewhere else making a whole heap of noise. But we managed to record these vocal takes of us singing. We got the lyrics up, and we kind of just done different versions of the lyrics, and we kept doing stuff. She would take a line, I'll take a line, or she would take one word, I'll take one word, then we'd do it, come in at the same time and sing it. So many different versions of where that could have gone. But the thing that was really nice was just like us slightly gently saying, people make the work, like, I can't remember the melody, but it was nice enough. I was like, oh, that's great, I'm actually going to stick with that. And then I led with that, and then just started building more things around it. And then just like, it's like the idea of wanting to produce a song, but then just deconstructing the whole thing and just taking these little elements from it and then just scattering it across the whole score so that it felt more like you've deconstructed it, but you've then built it back up into something else. So that was one technique of working with some films.
And is it that it kind of happened that you started scoring these films, or was it something you were interested?
I think I was interested. I don't really know how or why people thought I was good at making scores, and I don't think I am, but I do have some ideas that I'd like to bring to the table of them. And I think the people that thought that have come to my DJ sets maybe, or they've been to some spaces where I've played music, and they know that maybe I have a sensitivity to certain songs being in certain places, and it's not so much about, like, DJing is about everything and nothing at the same time. Anybody could be a DJ, in my opinion, but there are some real masters of it who can really do some amazing technical things with DJing. And there are also people who really know how to select stuff. Like you got your selectors who, it's not so much about the blend from that song into that, but it's about that song because you've found this really amazing song that really connects with people. And maybe that sensitivity, there's a lot to be said about that,
That's another kind of research, right, to do in music, to find all those tracks. But how does the performative element of being a DJ kind of ties? Because obviously the way that in exhibition you're presenting your photography or your films is indirect, like audience is interacting with the work. But as a DJ, you're a live performer. So is that something which is important for you, or it's again just different kind of type of activity that is not necessarily directly connected with soundscaping for the purpose of films?
Yeah, I don't see them connected so much. I do think that's another version of myself. It's another part of my personality that I just enjoy, and I don't think it's all in the same pocket. I've just grown up in a very musical household. Not that people can play the instruments, but people experience music culturally in this really warm and sharing way. And being the youngest of 3 kids, my siblings have always had music around, and they've just grown up in a really great time of music, in my opinion. And I was just privy to all of what they were getting up to, and my parents as well. And that plays a part in how I DJ and how I perform as a DJ. And I don't see that the same. It's not the same as, I like to be a DJ, but I don't like the performative thing that has now become with DJs. I just like to be able to play the music and let people enjoy themselves. It's not so much about the camera being in the DJ's face and this egging people on and that stuff, that I'm not really that bothered. So I see it quite separate. But I still love it, still like doing it, still will keep doing it. I don't really want to stop one for the other. So, yeah.
And you have a regular event, right?
I do things every so often. This summer I've taken quite a bit of time off, and I haven't really got that many bookings until like August, September again. So I'm not going to do, it's nice. And I don't really fancy doing it, but I actually I think I don't fancy doing the organising. I would love to spend some time doing some record buying, but again, I haven't got the money to do all the buying I would like to buy. I might do some hunting. There's a great record shop nearby down in Beckenham. Somebody was telling me about the other day that I should stick my head in. So I might do that before I leave. There's a really good one in Addiscombe that I always like to go into. There's some in Angel. Yeah, there's stuff that I would like to do. And that's a different type of research, because you're having to do the physical labor of finding something and not wanting to spend loads of money for it. So,
but anyway, I mean, back to these ambient landscapes, soundscapes that you're creating, because I think that film is a really interesting medium where, well, sound and image meets, right? So it's essentially music and photography put together, I'm talking about my experience. That it became a little bit frustrating, editing while I cannot listen to music, which obviously was possible with any other kind of fine art related activity. So, but how do you find it where you're actually creating the score and
it's hard. I think that's why when I was showing you that footage, that person's song ended up in the film, because I was editing to that song quite a lot, because it really, really was, it carried everything that the film was about. Like, it was about that in there. And by the point, I didn't really plan to have it in there. I just needed to work with it to keep it there. And I was like, it'd be really great if it was just in the film, it'd be amazing if we could just stay in it. But yeah, it's difficult, for sure. Like, you need picture to kind of think about how you're going to produce sound, and vice versa. If you need to produce the picture, sometimes you need to also soundtrack your day with something. You need to walk around with something. It might help you pull in other kind of energies or sources. And I don't have a good answer for like a recipe of how to do that well. I just know that I listen to music all the time, and sometimes, yeah, it's not so easy. Or like, there's certain things I'll tap into. I'll listen to that thing that helps me, that artist or whatever, that mixtape that helps me really bring the energy forward. And making the last film, or making this current film, that has like 3 different elements of violin coming, like the different types of kind of like compositions, where one is really quite sleepy and it's kind of just floating in the atmosphere because it's on a loop pedal as well, so it's kind of swirling and building. And then there's another one that's a bit more like I can't remember what he was practicing something, and it was from, I think it's a classical piece of music. I can't remember who it was, and he said it was really difficult, but he was practicing it, and then every now and then he would slip back into this Ryuichi Sakamoto score that we wanted to kind of like bring into that space. Was workshopping how to kind of like put something together, because it's like, what do you want me to do? And it's like, well, what would be nice is actually let's bring together some of the sounds that we do like. And one of the things that I really do like is this Ryuichi Sakamoto song. Like, this is really beautiful. It's the story behind it. Like, it's not even the story, but the way that it builds itself and the way that it introduces itself and ends, incredible. Love it. It's amazing. And maybe let's think about that and what that's doing. How can we have this, think about this kind of like waveform of like, it starts off just like this, and then it's got this really intense bit, and then it comes back, and it does that again. And I was like, okay, maybe the film needs to do that. Maybe the film does. And with Soon Come, it starts off really gentle. Does it? Actually, no, it doesn't. It starts off with like radio static, and it's just got like the churning of an engine, a boat engine going and sputtering out water. So it's actually quite rumbly at the beginning, and then once that breaks, it then quietens down. And with this one, I was like thinking originally, it just needs to be really loud. Like, let's just annoy people at the beginning. Let's just be like, oh my God, what is going on? This is too much. And then it calms down, and then it does whatever it does. But actually, what it now does, it's got this like really prolonged kind of like grandfather clock ticking and some other chimes going on. So again, it's using those hints at time to do the thing that you want to talk about in the whole thing, which is like time itself. So yeah, I don't know. I guess thinking about sound in more visual ways is the best way to do it. That's my only answer. It's like thinking about it outside of what it actually is, like extracting the textural element of what sound is, to think about it visually, physically, to then go back to create the sound. You know, just learning about those really, really good people who know how to talk about sound, like, you know, Paulino Oliveros and those people who are just incredible teachers in my mind of like thinking about it. And then you can shape the rest of the stuff.
It's brilliant. I mean, scoring a film, that's something that definitely I would like to try at some point. Yeah, that's really interesting direction.
You should. Can't wait to see some films where you're making sound as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Plus the music.
Are these new instruments, so you've had them for a while?
The bass is Marshall, so that one is like a year long, and this is a guitar that I built. So like what was it?
Oh. You built it? Wow.
Like 12 years ago.
Wow.
So it's you know, already needed some patch ups. You know, there were holes in it. So I think your exhibition would be the current one in Nottingham would be a good touch point.
I really like the show. You know, I personally am it was a bit of a rush. I've had quite a lot of things on this year. I've been quite busy teaching as well as trying to keep on top of everything else. But when we installed it, or like when I brought some of the things down, I showed some work last summer after I saw you at Wigwell Lodge. And so in the garage after then, when we had Blaze outside recording some loop stuff inside as well, I used that, I actually built a score from those. I kind of put something together, and it worked perfectly as just a soundscape. And I had an exhibition with some of my images with a friend, and had a 2-person show. So I just wanted to have the score in that space. And it had all these empty breaks of rain. So the rain broke up the violin, and the thunderstorm comes in, and then it comes back again. And it just kept looping around. And I gave it enough space at either end that it wasn't constant. Had a bit of time either side. And then, you know, the invitation came in that summer to do a show in Nottingham now. And I was like, great, that's so nice, because I'd been working with Primary before, I'd done a residency with them. It'd be really, really lovely. So then I was like, oh, this would be a perfect opportunity to maybe finally just push to do the film. Let's get the film done. And then I'll do some more kind of images. And yeah, the works that are in there, it took me by surprise, but I'm glad it's kind of come in a more natural way that they've come together. I think when I had the idea that the show was going to happen, I began to plan, you know, I was already thinking about what the works were going to look like and how that was, but that never materialized. And the people that I was going to try and collaborate with, the film was also going to have a lot more movement in terms of like lots of body movements and lots of dancing. And it wasn't going to be this film that I was actually really going to present. And I think that's what I've always been torn with. There's a couple of different projects in my mind that sometimes come quite close together, but they're actually quite separate projects, because my practice is just experimentally doing all of the other stuff. So I'm glad I've actually kept them separate. And I don't know if that has displeased the gallery, because I kind of I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this, but actually I didn't do that at all. I've now done the thing that was deeper in my heart that I really wanted to do. And that's the thing that I've kind of, led on. So in the space, there are these new pictures that I've done on like transparency film, and it's color, and it's really like vivid color images of this muslin fabric, which I hand dye in hibiscus. And then I dry it, place it, and then do these kind of still life situs with either me in shots or these objects of instruments in shots. So the sea conch comes into play, and that's to reference something that I won't talk about just yet, because I'm still developing what it's going to do, but I know that that's the next leaping point, the steel drum and the conch and some of these instruments that is predominantly associated with Carnival and the Caribbean, but also they have other ways you can talk about them through other ways of kind of thinking about them, I guess. So I was like, oh, I'm going to drop those in just now, and we're not going to like close that off, because I want that door to be open to be able to do another show or to do more works with some of those ideas. And then the fabric is also in the space, and I wanted it to, it's a really beautiful kind of like Victorian school, and it has these really beautiful windows, and I wanted them to act as curtains, so it completely diffuses the whole space and has this purple hue or pink hue, and it does that, and it looks really nice. I love it. So I began just thinking about the installation of the ideas coming from not just the photograph or the film, but then them coming into the space. So it's just like extracting.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I wanted to ask. So were you working with a curator, or were you?
There was a curator, but I wasn't necessarily working with them as well as I should have been, because I was just too overwhelmed with too much work. And there was a lot of admin to do that I'm struggling to keep on top of if I'm to produce the work as well. There's just not enough time. Especially, I don't have an assistant. I don't have people to help me do stuff. I just have to do it at this point because the budgets aren't big enough, or I don't get paid enough to dedicate that kind of money somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I perfectly understand that. But I mean, what I wanted to highlight is that, I'm clearly seeing that you have both interest and, the skills of like designing the space in a unique way, and that you also recognize that as a part of your work, right? I think one of the first things I told you when we first met, that I was surprised to see that, on your website, like a photo of the exhibition is like, in the forefront, not the artworks. So and obviously, a space brings the possibility for storytelling, and again, experience brings the time in, right? How we explore the space, and you also displaying some work like flat on the floor, right? Which is different experience again from how we typically.
Yeah, I wanted to be able to peer over it. I also wanted people to be able to move around it, and they're on different height levels because they act as islands, and I wanted these plinths to have these island moments. And they do. Yeah, I'm actually really quite happy with how the show turned out. And I've got a show in September in Stills, and the film is now going to go in there. It wasn't originally going to go in there, but that whole the exhibition, the title of the show is called In Consideration of Our Times. And it was all about what is an archive, and how do you archive? And I'm using myself to kind of talk about all of that. And the film, to a T, is about memory and loss. So it's doing this thing it's doing it for me. So when the new director said, it'd be really great if you want to show that film in this space, I was like, yeah, it could be great. It has a Scottish debut, so I'm quite excited for that.
So the exhibition in Nottingham is running until
the 14th of August. But unfortunately, the film, so there's a gallery 1 downstairs, gallery 2 upstairs. I don't really know why they've done this, but they've done this anyway. We've done this program they're only open from Thursday to Saturday. So if you're in Nottingham, go on Thursday to Saturday.
Primary. This is the name of the gallery.
But the upstairs space is where the films are, which is just like a dedicated film space. They're only showing the films this weekend coming. Then there is the following weekend. Then there is a break, I think. Actually, then there's a break for a couple of weekends, and then they've shown it again another weekend. And on each weekend, the films are different. So it's a little bit complicated upstairs, whereas downstairs stays the same the whole time. And the films that are being shown are a film by Ria Stowe. So it's not all my films as well, which is amazing. There's a film by Ria Stowe, which is about the Caribbean community associations of Wolverhampton and Sheffield that she's made a film of. Ria's an amazing filmmaker. Don't know if you've ever come across her work. And we're also showing a film that I was inspired to then use for my film Soon Come, called Caribbean Voices, which was talking about the Caribbean community in Stoke-on-Trent in 2011. And then they're showing Soon Come, and they're showing An Impossible allegory and another allegory, which is the 2 films that I've been making around Julius Eastman and Nemo Hill, around that relationship that never lasted, that was lost, the symphony that was in the world that was also lost and then rediscovered. So Yeah, though they're all quite scattered, so it's a complicated show. And that closes 14th of August. And then the show at Stills in Edinburgh opens on the 12th of September, and I think closes on like the 16th of October. So again, a shortish run.
And is there anything else coming?
Yeah, there's some commission-based work. I'm doing a print edition for Cove Park, the residency location, working with the Alistair Gray archive at the minute, and doing a photo response for the artist and writer Chitra Ramasamwe. And I am working with Historic Environment Scotland to do this, along with 3 other artists, Graham Fagan, Tilda Williams and Alberta Whittle, to do an artist response to an Empire report on Scotland's involvement in Empire, which is going to be in Stirling Castle, I believe, and that's next February. And there's something else where I've completely forgotten. Oh, and I'm working with Maeve Redmond to create the Glasgow International identity for the next festival, which we done the previous one last year. So I'm working as a photographer and she's working as a designer, and we come together in that capacity to produce this like really, fun thing. It's like a commission where we have all the creative agency and we get paid as artists, and we have the artists, what's the term? We have the artists kind of like, I can't even think anymore. Anyway, we get to have all the agency around it.
Yes,
Which is fun. Happy to do. I like that kind of work. It's fun. So yeah, it's busy.
It's great things.
Yeah, busy and nice stuff. It's things that I want to do. Nothing that I don't want to do. So that's good.
That's most important.
Yeah.
Okay, plus a couple gigs, Junglehassi, DJing, also in Glasgow.
Yeah. So yeah, some nice stuff.
This was Matthew Arthur Williams on Empirical Animal Podcast Experiment. Links to his website and his social media pages are included down below. Definitely, if you are in Edinburgh, go check out his exhibition In Consideration of Our Times. And I see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening.